Here's how to find the bottom point of the arc of your swing for better contact.
This is Golf Smarter.
Fred, just a few minutes ago we were talking about low point of arc and how I believe it's a process and it's more simple than most people think. And if we learn the key ingredients to it, then we can find our own process to create the low point. Now, the challenge of low point is that it's been done by hand-eye coordination. I try to hit the low point, I look at a dimple on the golf ball, I think of this or think of that or hit down on the ball, but it's actually very simple geometry. The best ball strikers historically hit the low point of their arc 4 to 5 inches post-ball contact. So we look at the golf ball on the ground right here, that would be somewhere in this vicinity right about here. That would be the lowest moment in the golf swing. And therefore, we have to have a way to make that happen. And until we understand where the swing center is, then it's very difficult for us to have the options of controlling where the club runs into the ground. And so because there's multiple thoughts about where that is, it becomes quite complex. But if we define the swing center as the lead shoulder joint, and we make a quick observation, the moment that the lead arm and the golf shaft line up underneath the lead shoulder joint, that becomes the lowest moment in the golf swing. So at this moment, you can see the club is running into your mat here at a spot directly under the shoulder joint. And I can hit that same spot on the ground every single time because it's not a matter of me being coordinated, it's just an alignment. Arm aligns, shaft catches up to the alignment. So when these guys are all lined up under the shoulder joint, that's the lowest moment. So when golfers are learning how to get to control low point and they think it's all about weight shift, well, there's some value there. But if I have my weight back here on my right foot and I get the arm and the golf shaft lined up under the lead shoulder joint, I can still control low point and I can get it past the golf ball. So the location of the weight has something to do with low point, but it's not the major ingredient. Understanding the center and then making sure we align these ingredients up. Now, there are some saboteurs. The things that sabotage that is, in order for us to make this happen, the first thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we can put the shoulder joint in the same place before we make contact with the golf ball. And that becomes the lead goal. So if I can get my left shoulder for right-handed golfers and vice versa slightly beyond the golf ball, then when the arm and golf shaft line up, we're going to be able to get the contact on the ground, post-ball contact. The next thing is altitude. If this raises, obviously it's never going to touch the ground. And because the system is somewhat sensitive, if you were to just lower the left shoulder an inch in the process of your golf swing, unfortunately with the shortest clubs, that it causes the golf ball to hit the ground 14 inches behind the ball. So if you're hitting a wedge and you drop your swing center by an inch, it's a 14-inch error. So small errors are going to give us big outcomes. And the moment we hit the ground behind the golf ball, we get reactive. It's a stimulus response. The club hits the ground, that's too early. How do I avoid it? We pull the arms in, we raise our bodies, whatever. Those are reactions. So for us to control this, number one, we have to be in balance. Make sure your body's in a good balance position to your feet. Number two, before you deliver the club to the golf ball, you have to make sure that the lead shoulder is near where it began the golf swing, or maybe even a smidge past where you began. So that makes it easy for us to put the club on the ground post-ball contact. Now there's one other element, and there's a couple saboteurs. And in golf, this is called the radius of the swing, from shoulder joint to sweet spot. And the radius of the golf swing is a line that's from the shoulder sweet spot. It's above the arm and above the shaft. We hold the golf club on a diagonal. And if the radius was perfect, we'd be something like this, but that's not very functional for golf. So we learn to hold the golf club across the palm. So there has to be an angle here. So if the angle of that wrist joint goes beyond the original grip position, the radius of the stroke increases as well. And if you increase the radius 1 inch, it's the same as dropping the center an inch and causes the club to get into the ground too early. So as a golfer, what we do to control low point is make sure that we get the shoulder joint in position, align the arm and the golf shaft underneath the shoulder joint and maintain the integrity of that angle. Now, that is sort of the secret, if there was, because once you learn the process, that has everything to do with how clubs are designed to work. All golf clubs are designed to work off our center of mass. And when the club sits on the ground properly, the golf shaft points at your center of mass. Every one of them, driver through wedge. That's why what's called the lie angle is set the way it's set for each golfer. And from this angle, once we get the low point under control, we have to make sure that as the club's coming through, that the shaft points at the center of balance as we're coming through, and you can manage to set up the swing center, align the arm and the golf shaft underneath the lead shoulder joint, and have the golf shaft pointing at the same height as your center of mass. And then you can control where the club runs into the ground every time, and it's a process, not a skill. So we're using both the hands and arms, and we're making those things happen.
Click on the link below to subscribe to our free weekly interviews on the Golf Smarter podcast at golfsmarter.com.